जारी रखें प्रोग्राम। अल्लाह
तो मैं अल्लाह रहम करे, अल्लाह फजल करे, ये ज़ल्ज़ला है और बड़ा शदीद ज़ल्ज़ला है। अल्लाहु अकबर,
अल्लाहु अकबर,
अल्लाहु अकबर,
अल्लाहु अकबर,
अल्लाहु अकबर, अल्लाहु अकबर, रब्बि इग़फिर वरहम व अंत खैरुर राहिमीन, सुब्हानल्लाह व बिहम्दिही, सुब्हानल्लाह
अल्लाहु अकबर,
अल्लाहु अकबर,
सुब्हानल्लाह
सुब्हानल्लाह व बिहम्दिही,
अल्लाहु अकबर, अल्लाहु अकबर, अल्लाहु अकबर,
ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह
मुहम्मद
ला इलाहा
रसूलुल्लाह, ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह।
Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. And these are the scenes from 2005 where within the PTV studios, our anchors and our guests actually felt the tremors too as well. At that particular point of time, I was in my university in 2005, and it was about time that I was actually preparing to appear in my first of my sessional exams, for which I actually had to climb 3 stories in a building and go up the classroom. While I was on the third one, I could feel the building shaking. And as soon as everybody felt it, I think everybody was running outside as well. Shiza, you were in Murray, I guess, at that time.
I was in Murray, yes, that's true. Today, we are, ladies and gentlemen, reminiscing over the day, a very, let's say, tragic day in the history of Pakistan, and especially in the latest history, of course. And by that time, I was in my school, and I was in Murray. And Murray happens to be located in a place where, you know, it's near Muzaffarabad and Balakot as well. So all the disasters and all the things that were going on in the northern areas of Pakistan, because the earthquake was centered in Muzaffarabad. So, of course, Murray was also seeing a lot of things. And the footages that you're seeing on your screens right now, these were taken from the people who were actually seeing all of this live in front of their eyes on that day. It was the 8th of October, and
Yes,
it was 2005, and it happened early in the morning when, you know, people who work at offices were going to work or probably were in offices, students were in schools, and this happened at around 8:50, am I right?
Exactly, you're absolutely correct. It's been 13 years, ladies and gentlemen, down the line, with more than 80,000 casualties and 2.5 million people injured in India, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. It was a complete disaster, it was a havoc, and it was an emergency. And people didn't really knew what to do. Because in cases like these, in emergencies like these, you actually get panic and you just stop thinking. But other than that, I think that today we gather over here to in fact talk about the role of media, which Pakistan Television played a very pivotal role in terms of the earthquake, because I think the then Managing Director Arshad Khan Saab actually came up with the idea for a program which was titled as PTV Lifeline, through and through. You know, it was there, you know, giving information to people too as well. And for all of those people who were on television at that point of time, or probably were following up this beat as well, I think they had the real courage to be in the studios at that particular point of time, because then there were tremors over and over again. And it couldn't stop.
That's true. But before we move on, you know, since you talked about PTV's role, we have to establish here that PTV, being the state media, it has a certain responsibility, of course, not to create havoc, but in a very particular way report disasters as well, and, you know, play a very responsible role. So we were, I can't say we were sort of relying on private or local media back then, because a lot of people, I clearly remember, tuned into PTV for the right kind of news. And since you already mentioned that anchors were staying in the studios and everything, but a lot of people who were a part of PTV back then actually immediately moved out. Those who were reporting, but they took their bicycles, they took their bikes, the cars, whatever they had to go out and help people escape out of, you know, Margala Towers, they were falling off, and so many other places. So the sense of philanthropy and the sense of, you know, solidarity actually hit the nation back then.
And even other than that, Shiza, I'll add up to that. I think everybody, as a Pakistani, played their role too as well. For people who were actually abroad, they played their roles everywhere in our markazes, everywhere there were ration shops and people were coming and contributing too. So as a nation, we did emerge. And, you know, after 2005 earthquake, we were actually titled as the #1 philanthropic nation too as well. But other than that, ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about the role of media, we've actually called in our guests who are actually going to talk about, because he himself was one of the reporters who reported and who was actually taking all the follow-ups on the entire incident. And then people who actually go through such calamities or disasters, they do have stresses, they do get anxiety, they do get depression, and we do not really pay heed to all of these issues because of the fact that there are other more important issues lying, and we really need to pay attention to that. So post-traumatic stress disorder, this is something which we need to talk. And then there were people who thought that we should actually take an initiative as a member of the social fabric, that we really needed to help all of those people. But other than that, I think, there were a few confusions too in terms of when we talk about the role of media, because on Friday, National Disaster Management Authority came up with this idea of a conference where they actually gathered all the anchors and people, and they said that how do you think that all of these news should actually go out? Do you
Right.
think that we need to create a panic? Do you think that we need to be soft? Do you think that we need to scare them? In fact, and quite, because one of the person actually came up with the idea that, we really need to scare people. But I think this is just against journalism. And for
Absolutely.
all those people who actually have this idea is bad too. So how things should actually work in such a messy situation is something which we'll be asking, and how it was back in 2005, and where are we in terms of being socially connected and being on the same page as well. So on my right hand side, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very glad that this gentleman actually made his way to the studio, because he was the one who hired me on PTV World 2 as well. And since then, the journey has been very sweet and amazing. He's none other than Mr. Asmatullah Niazi Saab, who's a senior analyst. Hello, sir. Assalamu alaikum. How are you?
How are you?
Absolutely perfect. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And alongside Asmatullah Niazi Saab, we have been joined by somebody who's actually going to talk about PTSD. She's a psychotherapist, and she's none other than Miss Misbah Khan. Hello, assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Walaikum assalam. Good, thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. And last but not the least, ladies and gentlemen, she was the one who actually decided back in 2005 that there are a lot of people who are in problem. There are a lot of kids, and it was winters too. It was very cold. People didn't have proper clothes to wear. She said that, okay, I'm probably going to provide them with all the stuff they need. She's none other than Miss Aisha Iqbal, and she's a social activist. Hello, Aisha. Assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Walaikum assalam. I'm
Thank you very much for joining us. I know that it was very difficult back in 2005, but sir, you were the one who actually reported all of this, took up follow-ups as well. You yourself were in Pindi then. What happened that day, and then after that, it took us almost a year to rehabilitate. How was it?
I was not the only one that who reported the earthquake, because the entire operation of Pakistan Television and entire operation of each and every media house was focused on this particular event, because you
Calamity,
see
right.
that was a catastrophe. And you mentioned Arshad Khan. He was a managing director. He took a motorbike, and took one of the lady reporter, Katrina Hussain, to the tower, which was grounded due to that earthquake. So you see, that was we were not prepared for this kind of eventuality, and even the state organs, institutions, the civic bodies, I think still they are not equipped to tackle these kind of catastrophes. These kind
Even
of
after 13 years?
Yeah, even after 13 years. Last night I was watching television, and there was a report about Balakot, and people are still living in a makeshift houses. Billions of rupees poured into this country for rehabilitation and construction of houses.
Yeah.
But the agonizing thing is that still they are waiting for permanent houses. So when this happened, I was attached with the presidency, because as you know that reporters are attached with the presidency,
beats,
with the
right.
prime minister house, with the foreign. I used to deal with foreign office and the presidency. So I can still remember. Sajid Shah was our colleague. He actually expired 4-5 years back. He reported from Muzaffarabad, Kashmir.
Right.
And nobody was believing that there is a complete catastrophe in AJK, even all around Muzaffarabad. Nobody was believing. Nobody was thinking that this kind of eventually could hit Pakistan. Though we are on a several fault lines. When things started pouring in, the visual, I still remember the cameraman who was working in Muzaffarabad, his entire family was affected.
Right.
Entire family, I think 6-7 people died.
Oh God.
Gul, yes, his name was Gul. So, but he kept on working.
Right.
He forgotten that what happened to his family. Even he had a visual of his own house collapse, which was completely collapsed. But he kept on working.
Right.
He sent the visual which were used by entire international media, the Pakistani media, because we were the only channel having. By that time, we had the only operation in AJK.
Right.
We had Stinger, we had Permit Bureau over there. Still, we have, but nobody was blaming when those visual coming into the center, the master center, Islamabad. Then we started realizing that there's this. Yeah, I knew that this because the entire buildings, my house in Pindi, yes, that was shaking.
Exactly.
But we were not thinking that the catastrophe, the collapse of the buildings, because the carpeted, all the buildings were carpeted.
Absolutely.
The villages were completely demolished. So we kept on working. We were engaged because you see the entire focus of international media, international all of the countries were on Pakistan because it's a huge, big incident.
More than 80,000 casualties and 2.5 million people injured.
Absolutely. And you know, I can totally agree with Mr. Niazi Saab over here because I was seeing that live in front of my eyes. I mean, we were even, when we were, my dad immediately came to our school to pick us all up, and every other student who lived near us, we lived in a camp over there. And he picked every possible girl up who he knew and who, you know, the parents that he knew, because obviously he knew they were going to be aftershocks and everything. And the buildings which were not affected by earthquake were affected by landsliding. I mean, they were literally sliding down few inches and, you know, but moving on, Ms. Misbah, talking to you, when you talk about such disasters. So right after 3 days of this, we immediately moved out to Rawalpindi, Islamabad on the same day. And right after 3 days, my parents actually sent the three of us abroad, you know, so that we don't have to see that anymore because our house was broken. I mean, the walls were cracked open literally. So a lot of people told my parents that, why are you making such a big scene? It's so dramatic, you're sending your kids abroad. So what sort of, you know, stress or what sort of imprint that makes on your mind, such disasters?
There's layers of effectiveness I would use, just as it's aftershocks.
Yeah,
So,
right.
and when an earthquake hits, there's aftershocks. There's aftershocks in the mind when a disaster such as this hits. First, there's loss, that you are losing your loved ones,
Right.
you're losing your place where you live, you are being displaced. And through our recent refugee crisis, we know the sense of displacement. And then there's this realization when it hits you, okay, this is permanent. You know, the people who have lost are permanently gone. The house I've lost is permanently gone. I will never go back to my place of, you know, birth or anything like that. So there's various things like that. What your parents did was very, very healthy. But unfortunately, a lot of parents can't do that.
Yeah,
they cannot.
absolutely.
But what they can do is help build resilience, protect the children against what nature did. The parents can help protect the children in their mind. There's two kinds of trauma. There's short-term, excuse me, and long-term.
Right.
So short-term is immediately effective. So it's like there's an earthquake, because I was here as well, and my story is a bit longer. So it's shock.
Okay.
The unbelievability of like, oh my God, you know, is this actually happening?
Right.
And then it's like, okay, so what's going to happen? The existential crisis, like, am I going to actually exist after this? You know, the sense of immortality, that, you know, am I going to be living? Am I going to dying? There's lots of questions. Okay, that happens, that passes away. Then what happens is there's post-traumatic stress disorder. You would know about post-traumatic, but people who are listening, post-traumatic stress disorder was diagnosed in war veterans who had come back from Vietnam.
Okay.
So what happened was they had been exposed to long traumatic experiences in war. So they had seen bloodshed, they had seen loss of friends, they had seen loss of their own limbs. Right. And what happened was the mind could not contain that much trauma because we are human beings, we're not machines. So what happened with that was PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. So it's after the word, the label itself describes what it is as post. So the event happens, and then the effect happens.
Right.
People have this really misinformed conception, perception. Okay, it's happened, done and dusted, it's over. What happens in post-traumatic stress disorder? Flashbacks happen.
Absolutely.
Flashbacks happen. Symptoms actually the physical psychosomatic symptoms actually manifest themselves in the body, which actually react to those flashbacks.
But let's talk about it. What kind of symptoms are these? Because people over here within Pakistan, we're not very used to of going ourselves and getting our mental health checked.
Exactly,
So
that's
we have a
something.
lot of issues
Yes,
over here.
yes.
So for example, for somebody who might not even know PTSD and this might be the first time they're hearing about it, what are the most common symptoms which you can see or witness in a patient going through this
The first one is flashbacks. So actually reliving what's happened. It's very, very common for people who have had car accidents and survived. Survivors of major disasters have PTSD. So it's like there's guilt, there's flashbacks, there's panic attacks, there's anxiety attacks, and there is a sense of violence sometimes, or outbursts.
Right,
It's like, if
Flipping
someone,
over.
God forbid, if someone survived and it's like someone didn't survive, why did you survive? Or why did I survive? So all of these. So I could do a whole program on PTSD. It's a layered effect. And it's every person is affected differently with PTSD.
Okay, Ms. Misbah, we are going to come back to that, but I want to move on to Ms. Aisha over here. Ms. Aisha, you said you were a housewife back then, and you were not doing anything, but when you found out, well, just run us through with the story.
Yeah. As a founder of a welfare trust, which is running several projects in Islamabad and around Islamabad right now, I have a very significant relationship with the 2005 earthquake, because as you said, I was a housewife back then, and although my own family was not affected by this earthquake, but obviously we were affected and we wanted to do something. So a group of friends, I called up all the friends and we collected, and we started thinking what to do next, how to help those people who are in such a situation after this earthquake. So in the beginning we started collecting stuff like water bottles and tents and blankets, and we started sending them into the affected area. After a few days, I think after a month, there was a camp city organized by CDA in H114. So we started going there, and CDA was kind enough to give us a small piece of land in that area where we actually built up our first school. It was a big tent actually, and we started calling all the kids from nearby camps, and they used to come there and we used to teach them. And also we started having Quran classes for ladies, because Quran and religion, it really kind of gives us that comfort that we need in this kind of a state. Yeah. So that's what we started doing, and we also started arranging dastakhan for those people living there, because they were hand to mouth. They didn't bring anything with them from Muzaffarabad and other affected areas. So that camp city, it was there for about a couple of months or maybe a little more. When it was, everything was settled down and the people went away, then we thought what to do next. We have these volunteers with us.
3 years to go away as well.
Yeah, but that camp city was there for several months. I don't remember how many months, because I was back then, but we kept working there for those months. And after it was finished, we thought what to do next. So we had this group of volunteers, and we were very motivated. We used to come there every day, and we had organized our day according to that motivation that we had to help people. So that's when we thought of starting a school for the underprivileged children of Islamabad. We started going to the slum areas and marketplaces.
We'll definitely come back to that, but we have to head out to a short break too as well. But before going towards the break, ladies and gentlemen, I recently went to Kashmir almost a month ago, and as Asmatullah Niazi Sahab said, that people are still living in 2-bedroom houses as well, which is a very temporary procedure too. And other than that, so because I was very inquisitive and I was asking them how it was, when the earthquake struck, so he took me to each and every house which was in the vicinity, and almost every house has lost 4 to 5 of their relatives, which was very sad to know. But other than that, I think the society itself played a very amazing role. They were vulnerable, and then there are people who have been constructing houses on vulnerable areas which are more likely to be struck by earthquake. For that, I think we really need to have somebody from National Disaster Management Authority. We're going out for a short break. Don't go anywhere because when we guys will come back, I actually want to talk about the role of media in producing or making a resilient nation, because I think it is our job. We need to do that. Absolutely. And once we have our seniors in the studios, they'll be able to give us answers. Let's do it. Good morning.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to World This Morning, ladies and gentlemen. For all those who just joined in, today we are talking about the tragic earthquake that hit Pakistan about 13 years ago on this exact date, around 8:50 in the morning. And there was a huge amount of casualties that were going on. A lot of places, a lot of infrastructure was damaged, and a lot of loved ones were lost. And in line with that, today we have a psychologist over here, a philanthropist as well, and a journalist or a reporter who was reporting back then. So, Mr. Niazi, I cannot, help but think about something that you said. It's so intriguing that even today, a lot of the authorities that are responsible are not equipped to deal with such kind of disasters. Even today, you said, right?
Yeah.
But why? I mean, don't we know that we are geographically situated on a region where we are prone to such disasters?
That's the agonizing thing. That's the thing worrying. I think there are various levels of the problems, and to tackle with the problem
Right.
on a tehsil level, district level, division level, the provincial level, and the federal level.
Right.
NDMA is only supposed to coordinate.
But it was even formed after the calamity. Of
Yes,
2000.
earlier it was ERA, Earthquake Quake Rehabilitation Authority, which was totally not equipped to deal with this situation, and that's why Army provided and the armed forces provided
Yes.
support
Yes.
support to ERA. So they were able to somehow manage the situation. And there were many the teams from many countries, but even country like Cuba sent a medical team. They had the best teams, and they were well equipped, and they are a tiny country.
And I think we should even thank all of those
Yes,
people, because
yes.
a lot of people came to the country.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
King of Jordan, he was the first man who came just after 1 or 2 days. He visited Pakistan, Islamabad. Kofi Annan, the Secretary General of he
United
recently
Nations.
he recently died.
Yeah.
He visited and went to the earthquake hit areas, and I was covering that. But you see, the agonizing thing, that is still we are not. The role of media is very important, and one senior most anchor who is always dear and near to the power corridors still today. He was seen mocking the situation. He was pampering, he was pretending. He was pushing one little girl
Right.
to say this, ke ye kaho,
So
to
this
say
is
something
actu-
against the people who are working in the field for
so
the
this is what-
rehabilitation of.
Sorry, I have to cut you, but this is what I actually want to direct the conversation to. But there's a very, very fine line. In such situations, there's a very fine line between journalism and entertainment. So a responsible journalist, I mean, like you, like other people that we do know, what are some of the things that you should keep in mind? I mean, when we look at local media, there's a lot of sensationalism. You know, but this happened, and you know, while this is happening, you go to families who just lost their loved ones, and you're
Even
shoving
within our-
mics in their mouths. That
Actually,
how do you
see,
feel? How do you feel?
the situation like this, when 100 and 1,000 of people are victim to the earthquake or floods or tornadoes or these kind of things, which is always seen very seriously, and you are mocking the situation. Media, I think, has a responsibility. You should be 100% sure before dissemination the
Of the news.
information.
Absolutely.
100% you should be sure.
Yes.
You should not add to the agonies of people.
But sir,
You should assist the people and situation.
But sir, there's one more thing, and I think that it comes to us Pakistanis naturally as well. So, because what happens is that, you know, I'm sorry that I'm drifting away from the topic a little bit, but this is within our own nature, this is within our own system as well, because God forbid if a Bahu and a Saas fights too as well, I think that they add up stories too. So we have this habit, and it's not just Bahu,
Yeah,
Bhai,
I
whoever.
understand, yes.
So, you know, people over here, we have this habit. But at the same time, you know, people who are on television, I think they should be very responsible, and they should be held accountable too as well for their words. And other than that, I think back in '93 when there were floods, back in 2007 and 8 when there were floods, PTV
10 as
did a
well,
great
yes.
job.
2010.
10.
Exactly,
Yes.
even in 2010.
One of the biggest operation we
Yes,
had it.
but sir, one more thing which I wanted to ask, and that was that whenever it's such a calamity, whenever, you know, the nation's actually going through stress, why do you think that these media houses, private media houses, have to sensationalize or sensitize the news?
No,
Is it
they
just
should
about
not.
ratings, sir?
They should
But they
not.
do, right?
They do because either for their ratings.
So what should we do
I
then?
think that they forget in a situation like this. They should focus the rating.
And I think
they
previously
should
banning
be
ratings
very
was a great
responsible.
idea too.
Yes,
I
they
agree.
should be very responsible. And I think if PAMRA should act. See, these are the situation when PAMRA, which is a regulator of private
Exactly,
channels, they should act, and if needed, they should suspend the transmission of such channels who are engaged in sensationalize the situation.
Right.
But I think during this earthquake in 2005. Even PAMRA didn't bother.
Exactly.
Yeah, and in line with that, Ms. Misbah, you know, let's see, when we are at the receiving end of the news, you know, when you're behind the televisions watching it and not, you're not a part of what's going
Behind
on.
or front?
Sorry, in front, I'm so sorry, in front of the television. And when you come across such videos or graphics that are absolutely, you know, you shouldn't watch them.
Yeah.
What sort of, I don't know, what sort of phase we go through by watching them? And do you think
You know
that
what
it
they
is
do is
important to
that-
create such a, you know, to disseminate such videos or graphics to actually create a, I don't know, horrific sort of phase that every
what they
every
do
person in
is-
the nation has to go through?
That they will actually put, like, you know, say Fateh Khan Saab OST at the back of these videos where people
Yeah.
are crying, people are dead on the streets, there's blood, and everybody was witnessing that.
Yes.
And one way or the other, if I can remember that by just Shiza just pointing out that, you know, this is what happened. So imagine that. I think we have it in our heads too. What do we do then?
Okay, the first thing, sorry,
Niazi Saab.
Niazi Saab, sorry, I'm very bad with names. What happens is there is lack of compassion. I always believe that we should use the skill of empathy. Empathy is putting yourselves in that other person's situation and imagining that happening to you. If it's something happening to you, then I put myself in Shiza's place and say, okay, how will I feel if I was watching this?
Right.
If I was watching my family dead under rubble, how would I feel? That is what's missing. I mean, that's something else that we were discussing in the break, something came to mind, sorry, but off topic, but another disaster which hit us, which is man-made, was the APS disaster.
Yeah.
Unbelievably graphic material shared for sensationalism, and it's still very, very fresh in people's minds. Going back to the question, what happens is, first is shock. It's like, oh my God, you know, and
Is
then
this
there's
even
this
real?
sick
Right.
curiosity in our mind. Okay, let me look into it further,
Right,
and then I'll go and
absolutely.
search it online.
Absolutely.
Okay, let me find something more deeper. And that what happens is that is a darker side of our human psychology. That is the sinister, insidious darkness that we hold. And what happens over time, the more we expose, it's a bit like being exposed to sunlight. The more you expose, the more your skin will become tanned and become resilient to the exposure.
Right.
The same thing, when you're exposed to long-term traumatic footage or images, what happens is your brain, your mind becomes desensitized. And when there's a level, then nothing affects it anymore. It becomes saturated because it's like, okay, done that, got the
So
T-shirt.
so is it good for us or is it bad for us when it becomes saturated?
It's
I think
horrendous for us as human beings because nothing will affect you then. You could see someone dying on the street and you're like, okay, Tika, dekha
You know
hai.
what? I actually
don't really
agree
care.
with that because so my younger sisters, of course, including me, my whole family, every one of us is actually exposed to such kind of news. And because of that, you know, lately my sister went to school and came back and I was like, why is the school off? And she's using her iPhone. She goes like, oh, one of my class fellows suicided, so the school is off. I was like, dude, what is happening? I mean, they're so not. This news is not sensitive anymore. They don't even
No.
feel, but they should actually.
Shida, once there was a suicide attack near a hotel near to us in Marriott.
Right.
And I was covering that story. And Barbara Platt, a BBC journalist, and because I was allowed to have a footage
Access to-
inside, access, I had an access, and she came to me, Mr. Niazi, was you there inside? I said yes. Do you have the footage? I said yes. What is the footage? I said this.
Right.
Are you going to show this? I said no. But in Pakistan, the many channels show this because we are not many channels. We are Pakistan television.
Right, absolutely.
Because Pakistan television is one of the oldest media house in this country, state broadcaster, and having ethics, and they know the ethics. They know
And
the
sort of
do's
set
and
the
don'ts.
bar high
Yes.
as well for local media, right?
Yes. You see, even we saw during the lawyers' movement in Karachi, people dying due to fire, crossfiring.
Right.
Yes. So, but you see, that is the point where Pembra should seriously act.
Well, this is
I
one of the
think-
places where
Yes.
actually it has to play its role, right? I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Shahzad, I'm cutting you
Sure,
off,
sure.
but this is in line with what we're talking about. Ms. Aisha, now, when I ask you this question, I want you to tell in terms of what actually you did, but also sort of giving out a message to people who should learn all of this. So when you were running sort of an organization for helping people, it's an NGO, right?
Yeah.
It's registered for 8 years now?
Yeah.
Okay. So for the people who actually send in all the aid, for example, me, if I'm sending you all the stuff, how should I make sure that actually you are disseminating it to the right people are getting it, and you're not, let's say, misusing it?
Yeah, we are open to everything is transparent. Everybody can come in and see. And actually, I invite people to come and see the working of our organization so that they can learn also. And you know, everybody can do something on their part. I also wanted to talk about the same thing that you were saying before. Whenever a nation goes through a hurdle or a misfortune, there should always be a way forward. So
Yeah,
since
but
we
why do we
started-
have to wait for an emergency or a calamity to hit us to be united?
Yeah, it's maybe it's human nature.
Yes,
I don't
can
know,
it be
but-
preventative?
Yeah, but at least we should think about ways so that we can prevent it in
Right,
future
right,
also. When we started the school, since we took our inspiration by the 2005 earthquake, we made sure that our children, you know, hundreds of children studying in our welfare schools are equipped with first aid and disaster management techniques. And as a teacher trainer by profession, I make sure that I tell my teachers to, teach their students also the ways to prevent any kind of disasters and to stay calm, just like Sir said, that, you know, we have to stay calm in case of whenever there's some
course,
kind of
yes.
I
you know,
have to
bad
say
thing
my teacher
happening.
ran out before the students did.
Yeah, so that's what
Even
we
my
teach
HOD
them.
was the first one to be outside the gate.
Ha,
So
we
my
have
head of
become-
department is just running in front of me.
Yeah,
Sir,
we
where are
have
you
become
going?
reactive
the
as
way.
a nation. We need to be proactive, but that will be when we already know what to do whenever there's such kind of a situation. And we also try to relate it with the Quran and Hadith, because you know there are so many beautiful examples
Absolutely,
when the
yes.
Muhajirin, you know, they migrated from Makkah to Medina. What did the people do with them? And also there's so many stories of the Prophet where we come to know how to manage any kind of disasters in our lives. So we
Very
should
beautifully
definitely.
I think that's true, but over here I need to pinpoint a few more things, and I think these are the things which people within the institutions who are actually responsible for looking after all of these disasters or the management of it need to be very picky on these
Vigilant,
things as
yes.
well, or probably they need to be vigilant about it. For example, you know, if we take a look at our fire brigade department, I don't think that, you know, with these high-rise buildings we can even help anybody, because of the fact that, you know, there's a building right next to our building as well over here which is burnt, and
Yes.
it's 100% burnt,
Yes.
and we couldn't put the fire out. So this is first thing. Other than that,
And
but
couldn't
if
save
we-
the people who were stuck in there.
Exactly. If we talk about Japan, you know, as Shiza said, that, you know, we're located geographically on such a
Always
location.
hit by a tsunami
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
earthquakes.
So
Right,
their
right.
so their
Floods,
news channels have
cyclones
got
and everything.
16
But they have the-
DSNG helicopters, and they
The
help
state
people.
channel, yes.
The state channel.
But they have made their lives livable.
Exactly.
You see how the nation works to meet these kind of eventualities.
That's
But
correct.
we still, you see, though the people of Pakistan responded actively well with, beyond their political affiliation, beyond their religious.
But sir, this is not the question. The question is, but
I don't know
no
even-
matter what happens, you know, by the end of the day, it's always Pakistan Army taking charge and then helping people.
My
so
dad
why
was
do you
doing
think
it,
that
I
after
saw
so
it.
long of such a tragedy, after 13 years, we sit down over here, and we even know right now that, you know, God forbid something wrong going to happen, Pakistan
Shahzad,
Army will be the
Shahzad,
best.
We are our own saviors.
Shahzad, actually, the army world over, they are asked to come and help in a situation like this. I mean, in United States,
Right.
because they are the most
Trained,
well trained
Equipped.
and equipped to meet the situation like this.
Exactly.
So I think this is not the question. But you see, we every institution like Capital Development Authority, the KD, the LDA, even at the Tehsil level, they should be they should be equipped with a fire tender. They should be equipped with 10 cutters. They should even you may not find them having cutters to cut the buildings, the debris.
Exactly.
So I think that this is the responsibility of the politicians of today.
Yes.
To equip them, because you see we lack the local body system in this country, which is not effective even after 71 years. They are supposed to local body. You see, world over, they keep on helping. They keep on building, and they keep on providing.
Or if nothing, they at least have the data too as well. But
Yes.
thank you very much, sir, for saying that as well, since we have to wrap it up too as well. Misbah, what would you want to wrap today's show with? Because today we were talking about being responsible
yes,
and how
exactly.
media needs to play their role.
Apart from media, I would say each of us is our own savior. We need to be able to gather awareness, gather knowledge. If anyone who takes anything away from today, go on any social media. I'm not using any words, any names, but go and get at least 5 to 10 minutes of training of how to save yourself in the event of a disaster. Even if it means that you save one person, even if it means you learn basic resuscitation, that you are saving your nation.
Right.
So that is what it's our responsibility.
Amazing that is. Aisha ji, what about you?
I will totally agree with ma'am, Misbah. Definitely we should get training, we should get education, we should try to teach our children also all the time, whether they are our students or our family children, we should teach them how to manage the disasters and how to act in such kind of a situation. Usually whenever an earthquake is coming, some people are screaming in the house and the others are just lying down, you know, and relaxing, chilling about it. So we actually need to know what we have to do and also how to help others in this
Guys, have a
situation.
word for all the reporters and people who are on television, please. A message, small message.
The message is, you see, always work in the field with responsibility and disseminate the information in a situation like this when you are 100% sure and your information is credible, authentic and attributed, and somebody who is responsible to disseminate and inform you a well verified news you should disseminate.
Right, so very rightly said, and I'm so sad that actually we're short on time because there are a lot of things that I wanted to discuss with Mr. Niazi over here, him being the person with so much experience. So I feel like, very quickly, Shahzad, I'm going to wrap it up. I feel like in today's schools and everything, when you're studying journalism or any form of mass media, mass communications, first of all, you should be trained on how to report on disasters. I mean, there's a certain beat that is allotted to you. If you are a disaster journalist or a reporter, let's say, you should be trained to how to deal with it, the information that Sir just said, and you should also be equipped with first aid boxes at least, and you should have your own food and things, and you should not be relying on others because you're also already going to a place where they need your help, so you should not be a person who actually needs your help there.
Exactly.
And
So-
also one more thing, I'm so
go
sorry,
ahead.
and this is your responsibility of everyone who's watching, not only journalists, because in today's world there's a concept called citizen journalism, right? Every one of you has your phone in your hands, and everything you see, you just put up a video on social media and talk about it. That is called citizen journalism. So even that, even if you're doing that, you should be careful and very, let's say, respectful about it, because being sensitive is something that should be a part of your human nature.
Even
that's
don't
great.
forward such kind of a
Without verification.
Yes.
Yes,
Well,
absolutely.
that's correct too as well. But ladies and gentlemen, I think one more thing, and it goes out as a message to the entire humanity out there. And it's a gist of what Hazrat Ali alayhi salam actually said, that if you are in trouble and you find your brain acting in panic, will actually create a havoc, and it's not going to give you a solution. So please make sure that if there's any problem, disaster,
Act
you
calmly.
need to be very calm and think. That's what we need to do. But please do write to us on our Facebook fan page, which is with the name of
World This Morning.
on Twitter,
World This Morning without a G.
on Daily Motion and YouTube.
World This Morning, World
This
This Morning.
fabulous repeat is going to be at
5 past 11 in
till
the
the next time. 1, 2, 3. Good morning.